One of the great and challenging things about the book of Daniel is the amazing commitment Daniel and a few of his friends have to do the right thing, no matter what the cost is. How do you have that type of commitment, and how do you live it out? Well, we get a clue to the key on how Daniel and his friends were able to withstand temptation, to give in, and to compromise, especially in light of how great of a cost it was to them to not make that compromise. We get a clue to that in Daniel chapter 1. Early in the story here, you have this king, and his name is Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. He has besieged Jerusalem, and he's now in charge of all these Hebrews, Jewish people. He's king over them now. And he wanted to bring some of the young Israelites into his service. In verse 4, Daniel chapter 1, NIV, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. And this chief of the court officials named Ashpenaz, as we see in verse 3, he was assigned to teach them, I'm back in verse 4 now, the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. Now, you need to know at this point in time that in the story, the king did not live by the same diet that the Hebrew people lived by. In fact, he had foods that were considered off limits for God's people. With that in mind, let's continue. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that, they were to enter the king's service. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief official gave them new names: to Daniel, the name Belteshazzar; to Hananiah, Shadrach; to Mishael, Meshach; and to Azariah, Abednego. What we have here is they're trying to indoctrinate them into a new culture and get them to embrace the Babylonian culture and leave behind their Hebrew, Jewish culture. They're changing their identity, if you will. Here's the key, verse 8. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself in this way. There you go. Daniel resolved. He resolved. He set in his mind and in his heart that he was not going to do this, no matter what the cost. When you resolve to live for the glory of God, no matter what the cost, then God shows you favor. We see this as we continue. Verse 9, now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel, but the official told Daniel, I'm afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you. Daniel then said to the guard, whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. So he agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kind. All right, so there you go. He made a resolution that he was going to seek to obey God no matter the cost. And God gave him wisdom to be able to navigate the circumstances so that he could be obedient to the Lord. See, if you will resolve, God will show up to help you. This is the lesson we see in Daniel. They resolved also. Later in the book, Daniel resolved that he would continue to pray to the God of Israel. When that became illegal, he was willing to be thrown into the lion's den. And then God showed up to strongly support him in that. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would not bow down to the idol. It was illegal. You had to bow down to the idol. They refused to do it because they only bowed down to the one true God. And they were thrown into the fiery furnace. God showed up to support them. You see, what we see in the book of Daniel is young men who are resolved to live for the glory of God, to do the right thing, and then God shows up to strongly support them. The book of Daniel and the stories in Daniel are really a illustration of the truth we find in 2 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 9, where it said that the eyes of the Lord move to and fro throughout the earth so that God would strongly support those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. Resolve to live for the glory of God, and God will show up to support you.